Hi, I'm Ryan.
Hey, I'm Jess, and you're listening to Your Therapist Is Not Okay.
Today we are bringing to you a very special episode where we have our first live guests on the podcast. Monica Lau, registered psychotherapist, is here to talk to us about psychedelics and mental health and how these can kind of interact.
Monica, we have wanted to do this episode ever since we started the podcast. So welcome here. This is such a treat to have you.
Thank you. Yeah, we have been in talks to do this for a long time. So I'm really excited to finally be here with you both.
As we dive into this topic, we're going to be asking Monica all sorts of questions about the world of psychedelics and healing and what this kind of looks like within certain clinical settings. What are some of the things you may not know about that or some of like the pitfalls? But before we get started, we need to have a caveat. We are not promoting that you go out and try a bunch of psychedelics for your own healing. If you are curious about it, there are very good licensed professionals that'll want to help you on this journey. But really, for us to have a good information session, because this is a huge part of a field that's not necessarily new, but it's been kind of getting back into popularity in the past couple years. So bringing Monica in felt really important for us to get all the info that Ryan and I don't really know about this.
Mon, we just wanted to start by asking you kind of what makes you a great person to talk with about this? Where's your kind of clinical experience and your interest in psychedelics coming from?
Yeah. Well, I have been doing my own personal work with psychedelics for a couple of decades now, and I've seen how it has helped me. And I believe, just the way that we can engage with psychedelics in a safe and healing manner, because it really brings a different dynamic to the therapy space
Hmm.
that traditional talk therapy doesn't.
Hmm.
And I think that we're on a lot of really exciting research right now. People are talking about it. People are experimenting with it. We're using it recreationally. And I'm excited to see how people are bringing their own psychedelic experiences into the therapy space.
Absolutely. And so, like, if just for like anyone listening, what do you think psychedelic healing is? How would you bring it into the therapy space? How does it work?
I think psychedelic healing, that's going to be a really tricky one to answer just because it's going to be different for everybody.
Mm,
I think the main thing that a lot of people will comment is experiencing a shift in perspective,
okay.
having a really strong felt sense of, as an example, if they're dealing with depression, maybe having a moment of really feeling happy and at ease as if depression didn't exist. Um, we also know that it creates a moment of neuroplasticity, allowing you to maybe work on changing your thoughts and habits. We don't know exactly what the psychedelic is doing to the brain yet, but there's a
Ah,
lot of really amazing neuroscience stuff out there, um, figuring that out, getting
mm,
clearer on it.
that's neat. And actually, I think in some ways, like, especially because this is not new. I was looking into something for a friend of mine, and then another client actually happened. So we were looking into like MDMA or Molly, and I realized like I was reading something about how therapists back in the day used to take MDMA in order to listen better to their clients. And so it feels like this has been around in this space for a very long time.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I mean, it started off with psychedelics. I believe it was LSD in particular to induce uh, psychosis. So therapists could have an understanding of
Ah,
what schizophrenic patients might be experiencing.
Hmm.
ah,
Um, and depending on your experience on psychedelics, it could feel a little bit like psychosis, or you can
mm,
have a totally different experience that's very expansive and
mm,
um, warm and loving and beautiful.
mhm.
But there was some initial experimentation early on.
It was
Hmm.
not warm. Yeah. That would probably have been very scary to
Yeah.
experience
Yes.
suddenly for the first time. Yeah. It is interesting that there is kind of this chunk of history, it was mostly in like the 60s and 70s, where there
Yeah.
were a lot of clinical trials around psychedelics and particularly LSD.
Mhm.
And then that all kind of changed with changing political times, and like the US
Mm.
had their war on drugs, and we became a lot less open to that kind of
Mm.
experimentation and exploration. But there were like pretty successful clinical trials, or at least interesting results that were saying like there's maybe something going on here.
Hmm. And then it went away.
Yeah.
And then we didn't hear anything for God, I'm thinking like 2 decades, 3 decades. Then it just kind of like fell off of all sorts of ways of talk therapy and experimentation. I don't know enough about the history to know the why of that, but it's all of a sudden come back with a resurgence. So over to you, Mon. What's going on here? Why the sudden drop off, the resurgence now? Did anything happen or is it just the way that all trends come back?
Well, as Ryan was saying, there was a big legal or making drugs illegal.
Mm,
And psychedelics definitely got lumped into with a lot of more harmful addictive drugs. And it still is that, particularly in Ontario,
yeah.
psychedelics are still class one drugs.
Hmm.
Um, we know that the classic psychedelics don't have addictive qualities to them, and they can be actually used to help with addiction.
Mm,
But that hasn't changed for us here in Ontario. You know, it's still illegal. It has not been decriminalized yet. But it's still being used currently in special access studies. Um, I think it has come back because, one, in some cases, it's quite effective. Our traditional talk therapy has some limitations that psychedelics may be helpful in breaking the barrier to.
mm,
And people are experimenting, people have access. And even in recreational use, some people have had some pretty profound experiences and they're
mm,
looking for places to go to talk about it and integrate. And that's how therapy can support someone who is, whether they're accessing this in a study
mm.
or through ketamine based clinics or even in their own personal use. It's just happening. People are into it, you know?
Yeah, so as I understand it, like one of the big important things is that therapists in Ontario and in most places in the world can't give or have someone take in a session psychedelics, but what we do have is people coming to sessions, like you're saying, having had experiences through a different legal route or just through their own recreational experimentation, and then they do what I would call integration work. I'm kind of curious if you could tell us some more about what does this kind of integration work look like?
Hmm.
Yeah, that is a really great question. And you're right. I think the majority in terms of accessibility, whether it's through study or through clinical use,
Hmm.
is hard for a lot of people. And
Yeah.
so if they've decided to experiment on their own or has had a recreational experience, coming into therapy for integration is where, you know, the magic really happens.
Hmm.
um, you can have this experience, which is like profound and life changing. But if we don't actually apply the knowledge that we gain from these experiences, it's just that. Wow. It's
Mm,
just a story to tell that
mm,
was really exciting or scary or whatever the experience was. It really does take dedication, whether that is through small habits, um, aligning yourself more with values, challenging your own false beliefs that you might be holding. And that takes time. You know, psychedelic integration and even after a psychedelic experience is an unfolding process.
mm,
Layers and layers come off. And with each of those layers is often potentially something to examine and
mm.
something to take away for your own experience and journey.
Hmm. That's really interesting the way you kind of describe that, like, without the kind of integration, without actually taking some learning from it, it's just a trip, it's just an experience that you had, which is not to shame that or anything, but it does take it in a different direction than the kind of intentional healing one. I'm really happy to share that I've used psychedelics myself and have had really meaningful experiences that help me kind of reconnect with myself.
Mm,
But for me, it was more like I got kind of a glimpse of a way out of my depression.
mm,
And then I still had to like follow the way out. Like I still had to take action and be consistent and persistent with kind of coming out of that. But it kind of showed me like a little glimmer of hope almost, I would say, to reconnect with that part of myself that wanted out.
Ryan, did you see somebody or like did you try to do some of the integration work Monica was talking about, or was this more just a personal journey for you?
I did my own kind of integration work. It was during a time when I didn't have a lot of access to therapy or healers. So besides
Mm.
myself.
I really want to just kind of like pick up where you said, Ryan, that there was this glimmer,
Mm,
this little piece of hope for a lot of people who experience it. Really just takes that,
Mm,
just a little glimmer of hope that something can be different. And because it's so felt in the body and in the spirit and in the soul,
mhm.
that it creates an imprint. And
mm,
with that, it's just like, I always envision it like a coal.
Mm,
And as long as you really nurture and protect that ember,
mhm.
it can turn into like an inferno. It can
Ah.
change your life. It can burn a house down too. So, all of that with care, right?
Yeah, tend to it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Hmm. With my experience with psychedelics, it's always been very like with people. So I haven't had that alone experience that you're talking about, Ryan. It's been much more connection and being kind of like connected to someone in a way that we don't often get to do. But
mm,
for my other friends who've done, let's say, psilocybin, which colloquially is just mushrooms, there's been this aspect of connecting to nature. So it feels like connecting to self, connecting to nature, connecting um to the past or to like, this part of our brain that can open up. You were talking about a lot of the neuroscience. It's kind of looking into this and studies. And I bet probably they're looking into these areas of the brain that are just allowing ourselves to have this expansive, less constrained kind of way of seeing the world. Is that how you would conceptualize it? Because when my friends are talking about being out in nature, like, and seeing the colors and seeing the vibrancy and seeing the connection and the sounds, there feels like there's a real paying attention that we don't get to have in our day-to-day world.
I think depending on the type of substance that you're experiencing can create more sensitivity to your own senses,
Hmm.
like colors, vision, sound, touch, taste. While there are others that might not enhance that experience quite as much.
Hmm.
And I think what you're speaking to is experiencing the world in a different way.
Hmm.
Um, Different psychedelics will work on different receptors in the brain. And I think a neuroscience one could be like its own 5 hour episode of what's going on there. But um, I guess to put it like extremely like top contour, low profile, it's just disrupting your typical thought patterns, your typical neuro pathways, and giving an opportunity for other connections in your mind or in your soul to actually make that connection.
Hmm.
And just with anything we do, when we experience a new connection or trying to develop a new skill, we have to continue to reinforce that new pathway,
Yeah.
that new way of thinking, that new way of feeling or behaving. So it requires that time as well. It's not going to happen just in this one experience alone.
Huh.
mm. Actually, there's so much synchronicity there with just psychotherapy, that we're often trying to work with people to take on new perspectives, think about it from someone else's point of view, take kind of a third person perspective to watching their life, like lots of different ways that we try to do that. And it sounds like people have these really meaningful experiences that are a different perspective through taking some of these substances. So I guess I can kind of really see how, especially if someone is feeling stuck,
Yeah.
this might be a way that they end up feeling kind of unstuck. It like physically combats that mental rigidity.
I was actually thinking about the liking it, like it won't happen just right away. That you're not going to take this necessarily and going to have this eye-opening experience. And I think I was
Mm.
liking that also to psychotherapy. I just had an amazing breakthrough with a client. And very, very rarely do breakthroughs happen in this sense of like, aha. It happens through like, I've been doing this for 3 years and today it clicked. Or today I made that choice to do something different. Look at this. I did this because of all the work leading up to it. It's like you almost like are climbing a mountain step by step. And when you get to the top, it's like all the work mattered. But during that journey, you're just seeing the next kind of hurdle, the next thing. And it feels like potentially when you're doing psychedelics, you might have this feeling of it being this kind of breakthrough thing, but maybe it is actually about continually nurturing this flame. I don't know if what you make of that, Monica.
I think that there is this very prevalent and coveted story of how you took mushrooms or LSD or Iboga, whatever it is, this one time, and you
Mm.
woke up like a totally different person.
Mm.
And that's not to say that that has never happened.
Okay.
Um, but is it less common? Um, I don't know. Maybe this is like my own hot take. I do actually think that's less common.
Yeah.
Um, and I, you know, caution people in thinking, and that's with anything. Like this is the thing that's going to make that difference that I need in life.
Yeah.
Mm.
So yes, psychedelics are powerful and they can engender and inspire a lot of change. Maybe even in just one experience. But most of the time, what I hear, even in my own experience and in integration work with clients, is maybe it wasn't actually quite what they thought it would
Mm.
be. Um, that there's disappointment, oh, that was fun, but I didn't get that breakthrough experience I was thinking I was
Ah.
going to get.
Mm. So it's really not a miracle cure, so to speak. There can be as much disappointment, maybe more than there are breakthroughs.
Yeah. I mean, do I want psychedelics to be a silver bullet? Yes. But is it? No. You know?
Yeah.
Mon, I want you to speak more to that because I think I've had both experiences that you're talking about with clients, like of being like, Jess, I'm depressed. I'm going to actually a ketamine clinic. So doing it right, doing like like checking all the boxes, and I'm excited. I'll catch you on the other side. And then coming back and be like, it was fine. It was good. I don't think I'm changed. I think I still have depression. And so that breakthrough, that miracle, that silver bullet you're talking about didn't happen. And so I think it's actually really common. Can you talk to me more about that?
Yeah. I think particularly in clinical use,
Hmm.
people will turn to, because right now in Ontario, we have access to ketamine assisted psychotherapy. Um, and unless there's special access to something else like psilocybin and MDMA, most people will only have access to ketamine.
Okay.
Uh, and regardless of what it is, I feel like people turn to psychedelics when they're really, really desperate. Like
Hmm.
this is their last ditch effort. We've heard so many things, but because of access, legality, stigma, and fear around using I'm like, no one can see this, but I'm air quoting drugs. So just envision me air quoting drugs. Um, is sort of their last resort, you know?
Mm.
I do think there is still a lot of stigma around it. Getting a little off track here, but let's coming back to this part of disappointment.
Yeah.
Yeah.
As with anything, whether it is just learning how to work with the drug or the medicine, it takes time. It takes time to develop your relationship. It's like we don't go to one session of therapy. We would never expect to go to one session of talk therapy and be like, ta-da,
Yeah.
I'm different. I'm better now.
Yeah.
We actually do have an understanding that it's going to take time, and we're committed
Yeah.
to developing that relationship and doing our own personal work. And I think working with psychedelics or plant medicine, however you want to call it, there is a relationship that's formed, whether that is a relationship with the medicine itself or a relationship with yourself with using psychedelics or plant medicine work. And so I think there is a need to really temper expectations without also kind of holding it so tightly that it doesn't get an opportunity to become something life-changing. But it's a very delicate dance between managing expectations while working with your own intentions of what you want to experience, and then the integration work that comes afterwards. I don't know if I answered that question fully, because I feel like there's kind of two branches of psychedelic work, which is your clinical format and then your more traditional indigenous practices around that have a different framework to it. And then there's also people who are using it recreationally on their own or in community.
Yep.
So, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think each of those different ways will have its own kind of impact and experience, and they're each very different. My experience in the past has been like very much the preconceptions, the state of mind, the environment that I was in had a pretty huge impact on what I experienced. And so that also like, could be potentially part of the work that people do is like learning how to set their intention, how they want to be in the space, like how they want to curate things so that they feel kind of safe and like have an opportunity to experience something meaningful instead of something scary. Although scary things can be meaningful, I suppose I should say.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I guess as an addiction specialist, I've always been a little surprised by the ketamine use in
Mm-hmm.
psychedelics because to me, it's not even a psychedelic.
It's not.
It's a tranquilizer.
Oh my gosh,
Quite
I can
literally,
go
that's the
off on
class of
this so
drug that it's
hard.
within. And I don't know if this is a caveat that Denise can kind of is like, I don't know if we should talk
No,
more
I
about
literally
that
was
substance,
thinking about
Mon.
I mean, we can talk about it because I think there are some important things to talk about. So, ketamine has also been used for mental health purposes, and it is a dissociative anesthetic.
Okay.
And in low doses or even in higher doses, it can create a disconnection or dissociation from our regular schedule programming.
K-hole.
I was just thinking, is that the K-hole?
That's when it goes really bad.
Ah,
Yeah.
That's really okay, yeah, intense.
But we're talking about, again, the psychedelics. We're lumping ketamine into this umbrella. It is not a traditional psychedelic, but it creates a dissociative effect that allows you to maybe have a different opportunity to look at yourself and your life a little bit differently that psychedelics can do. And the reason why it's being used right now is because we've seen it being effective in certain mental health applications. It is approved for human use already. So it doesn't have to go through a lot of the, policy changing stuff. And for some people, it's quite effective.
Mm.
I think that there needs also to be some education around ketamine being addictive,
Yeah.
and that there is now a new wave of ketamine addiction that has arisen out of psychotherapeutic use. So, not dissimilar to the opiate crisis, right? Like the opiates were prescribed for pain killing
Mhm.
and it was
Hmm.
effective at that, but it was also highly addictive.
Yeah.
So, just really mindful of that kind of usage, even with ketamine, can be tricky.
There are a lot of states in the US where you can legally access a pretty long course of ketamine assisted treatment. It's not, it's, like quite prolonged, and that does sometimes make me a little nervous knowing about the potential for physical addiction as well as a more kind of mental addiction that comes with that.
Mm-hmm.
Well, especially because on the back end of what you guys are talking about, one session isn't going to necessarily do the change that you're looking for.
Right.
And so you're not going to have this breakthrough moment. You're going to have to kind of have some sort of treatment plan. And then the dark side of that is what, how long?
Hmm.
How is your body susceptible to this? What does your body come to rely on or need?
Mm-hmm.
And I suppose knowing that too, if someone has a lot of really positive experiences or feels like they're getting really close to healing and their clinical trial is over for whatever reason, that's still something they can access on their own. And then it
Mhm.
might become a less controlled and more survival kind of coping mechanism, which survival is a, key part of the addictive cycle. Yeah.
Mm.
It's very interesting to think about kind of the legality and the history around some of these things, and just to recognize that, like, this drug that is approved for human use and has been used in different ways for a long time is considered safer than traditional plant medicines that many cultures have used since before we could write, as far as we know.
Mm.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, actually.
Yeah.
Mm.
And those plant medicines don't have addictive qualities to them and have been shown to be quite effective for healing and treating addiction, especially ibogaine or iboga. And
Hmm.
it kind of gets into a talk of medicalizing and like, traditional practices and capitalism and, you know, all
Yeah.
sorts of things there with that, which, that's a topic.
Oh man. Okay, part two. We'll put it I think that that's so true. Like this is a good topic. And I think actually like allowing ourselves to go into the dark side of this, allowing ourselves to see some of like this part is actually a good part of this conversation. I think just what you talked about now of like why one drug over another, da da da. Um, I want to ask you about a bad trip, but I actually want to tell you a funny story first, Monica. I have only been in Toronto for 6 years, and I have been finding out the funniest ways that in like the 70s to 90s they would sneak LSD into like promotional materials for like different things. And so they would have these postcards be like, buy one, get one free. And at the very corner, there'd be just like an acid tab. And so you'd hand these out at parties as if you're promoting, but really you're just drug dealing. I've been in love with
Fascinating.
Toronto's like way of like just like shadily like handing out acid for like different like book launches or other things. I thought you might be interested in that.
That makes me think very much of just like having been in Toronto and knowing that psychedelics are illegal and seeing literal mushroom stores. And I'm like, what is going on? It feels like it's this kind of like eyes wide shut thing.
Mhm.
Yeah. Yeah. And it it's just people are aware and people are using it,
Yeah.
Yeah.
right? And they're being creative in finding ways to get access. And of course that comes into a lot of safety things too, in terms of quality, where are you sourcing, and harm reduction. Um, people need to be mindful of that as well.
Yeah. I'm just loving all these stories from the 70s. I was like, dang, Toronto.
I know. Where was I in the 70s?
Right?
Did not exist.
Cutting edge.
I'm in the wrong era.
I feel that way very often.
I know. I like getting to know our city and our history. I was thinking about it as we were thinking about like what kinds of drugs and um I guess one of the things that I wanted to kind of pivot to and ask you about is we're talking about this kind of being a last ditch effort for healing or something that we think is going to help us. What about for those who are fearful? We already had mentioned the term bad trip, right? That is not outside the realm of possibility. Even if I think you do everything right, it really does do something to our brain chemistry. I don't know a lot about it. Can you talk to us about what a bad trip really could look like or where it comes from? Some of that details for us as we start to try to get healthy.
Yeah, a bad trip. A bad trip can be anything that someone did not like about their experience. So this could be pretty broad. But
Yeah.
if we're going to like the nightmare zone of bad trips, like it can be something that is very scary.
Hmm.
Some people might describe like they think that they're dying or um, re like a derealization of what's happening.
Hmm.
That can often happen if we're working with these very powerful medicines and we're not in the right mental state, the mindset. So, what Ryan was saying earlier, set and setting, the mindset's not right. Our environment is not conducive or supportive of an experience like this. It can also be a result of dosage.
Okay.
It can also be a result of not having the right support around you to stay grounded or just, having that kind of navigation support.
Hmm.
Mm.
Um, and it can be really traumatizing. A lot of people will have a bad trip or experience a bad trip, what they would call a bad trip anyway, and
Yeah.
like never, ever, ever, ever touch this again.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And I'm guessing possibly not have a place to talk about it or avoid talking about it, maybe because there's shame or fear of it reoccurring. I guess I'm kind
absolutely.
of wondering where even some of the things you described that like would could be very scary. I found myself thinking like in a lot of work with integration, like someone you could make meaning out of that that generates something positive.
Hmm.
Absolutely. I think, I mean, if you're in the spheres of like just psychedelia, though, there's this adage that like you get what you need and not what you want out
Hmm.
of the experience. And sometimes that is a very, very challenging or bad trip.
Mm,
And there can be a lot of somatic residual effects, psychological, emotional, all of it can be very traumatizing. Um, but with integration and working through that, we might or can come to learn that that experience might have something to learn from it. Like it doesn't have to be just like this bad trip and then you're traumatized and you never touch psychedelics again. And that all comes in the same container of care. And the
Hmm.
same thing if you experience trauma, whether that's physical, sexual, like any kind of trauma, it does disrupt your whole concept of who you are.
Yep.
And that's not to say that people haven't healed from that in the
mm.
right spaces with the right time, with the right care.
Hmm.
I'm absolutely thinking about like there's the concept of post-traumatic growth that a lot of people do if once they're able to be safe and have support,
Hmm.
experience a lot of growth and learning as they move past their trauma. And I guess I'm also even thinking about the way that in psychodynamics we might engage with dream work, which
Yep.
includes nightmares. The dreams that we
Oh yeah.
talk about are very often not nice dreams,
Yeah.
but there's something, yeah, to be learned from them. I also this is a side note that I thought was really funny when you said psychedelia. I thought that would be your drag name, psychedelia.
Oh my gosh, I wonder what their outfit would look like.
I definitely like a mushroom cap, like a big mushroom
Ooh.
cap. Actually, like Toadstool from the Mario Brothers,
Mm-hmm.
but with like really really cunty makeup.
All right.
Anyway, I guess as we're talking about this, I'm now kind of starting to wonder. How does someone know if they're kind of a good fit to engage in this kind of integration work? How do you know if you're ready? How do you kind of get ready for that?
Getting ready for integration work?
Yeah, I mean, if you're
Hmm.
basically, I'm asking like who might be a good candidate for psychedelic healing?
Mm, all
If that's a
right.
question we can really
Yeah,
talk about.
yeah.
Yeah.
That's a okay. So there's for sure certain things that are like definitely no. Like if you have been diagnosed with schizophrenia or anybody within your immediate family, first degree is diagnosed with schizophrenia, that's like totally an exclusion criteria for a lot of this work.
Yeah.
There are still a few other caveats, like if you have a history of addiction and the access to the drug that you're using is ketamine, you might, knowing that ketamine is already addictive, you might want to think about that.
Yeah.
Um, but if we're talking about just our, here I am air quoting again, normal, whatever that is, person who's not been diagnosed with something like that, um, I think it would be okay. So we're going to definitely go like the more woo woo route because I don't know how I would tell someone if they're like diagnostically ready to do psychedelics. But I
Sure.
do think that the experience, whether there's the lore around it or not, it
Yeah.
will attract the curiosity of certain people.
Mm.
You'll
And
kind of, if you're already interested in this, if this feels like a right mode, that almost allows you to already possibility be like in this camp.
yeah,
Mm.
and I think there's if we're looking at more plant medicine type work, non-clinical spaces, there's usually some kind of calling.
Mm.
There will be an invitation from these plant medicines to work with you.
Mm.
If we're talking about more clinical healing, then you know there would be what your reason is for. Do you have access? What is the molecule or substance that they're currently doing the testing or research on? Because that is the main way of getting access to it in Ontario outside of ketamine. And a lot of the clinics will provide very comprehensive screening and support to make sure that working with, I'm only going to be speaking about ketamine for this section, is right for you.
Mm.
Mm.
I
Mm.
really like that term. It'll call to you. The plant medicine will call to you. What does that mean for you, Mon?
For me, um, that has been, um, how would I put it? Sometimes it's shown up in dream work.
Mm.
Sometimes it's shown up in a curiosity and just like, what is this kind of energy that I'm looking for? Because all the plant medicines have a different spirit to them. They work in different ways.
Mm.
And sometimes you'll connect with one plant spirit more than another at different parts in your life, or you'll just begin to form a very deep relationship with a particular one. Very commonly we hear ayahuasca being one.
Hmm.
And there's a lot of retreats
Yeah.
in and around the world who do that kind of work.
Yeah.
And we have mushrooms, of course, and then iboga, San Pedro, mescaline, peyote. These are the common plant medicines to work with.
Yeah. I think especially, I think why it struck me is that we're so medicalizing this field right now. And
Mhm.
there's like you have to be with somebody who's like a psychologist or somebody who has like some sort of medical license. And when you said that, it kind of put the plant medicines back at the forefront,
Mhm.
um, especially because the aspect of like what you're using it for is to be transformed, is to open up a mind or a wavelength to something beyond you. And especially in North America, how often are we told that like science rules, that we have to be empirical? And so it was a neat way of seeing kind of like that juxtaposition of using this medicine, this plant medicine that might call to you, and how we're trying to medicalize it and stamp it in a very particular way.
I think, well, I really like this part of the discussion because, originally, We've been, as Ryan has said, we've been using psychedelics, and humans have been together for forever. And it didn't become clinical or medicalized until the very recent past.
Yeah.
Now, there's not to say that one is better than the other. There is an environment that is right for whomever it is that's looking for a certain experience. Not everybody is going to feel called to go to the jungle to do ayahuasca. They might want the safety and support of a clinical setting.
Mm.
Some people may be really turned off by the way that a clinical setting might hold or handle the use of psychedelics and prefer a more natural or traditional practice. Well, and it's also to say, like, clinical practices are also integrating different ways of working with this medicine. So actually, I am glad that there are different options to suit different people so that they can
Mm.
still have access to this medicine, to this experience in a way that they feel safest to do. And that is probably the most important thing, is safety.
Yeah.
There's physical safety, of course, but then there's also the mental and emotional and spiritual safety to have such a profound experience that
Mm.
without that can really impact whether you get a bad trip or not.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, I think that's like my 2 cents. Like, I'm not hating on any one of them, and I'm actually really glad that these options are more available.
Mm.
Mm. That's a really cool and kind of grounded perspective that I appreciate you taking. That's kind of like not just saying like this is my favorite way and this is the way everyone should do it, but
Mm.
that just like with any modality of healing, any modality of therapy, that like we emphasize like client therapist fit and how the approach works for someone. And the same person and the same type of therapy is not going to work for everyone. And that
Yeah.
absolutely makes sense for medicines as well.
I was thinking that too, Ryan. I was thinking about how many clients have said, I just saw your picture and I knew. Or I felt something in that, that aspect of there's something ineffable sometimes, like what we're called to. And by trying to say like this is the only way, or this is the right psychedelic, or you're the only you are the right candidates, I think that it kind of creates this limitation of like what it means to seek out healing. Um, and honestly, I think that one of the caveats that I don't know, I just feel called to say is psychedelics are not for everyone. I know that for anybody that really is experiencing high level anxiety and all of these kind of feelings, like it might not be something you want to engage with. It might be the kind of thing where you're not doing therapy wrong, or you're not doing healing wrong if you're not being open to every possibility of healing. Allowing yourself to kind of think, does this make me excited for the possibility, or does this actually really scare me? And if it's the latter, that's wonderful. You actually have a deeper insight into who you are just by knowing that you have a boundary there.
To speak off of what you're saying, Jess, is like, um, psychedelics is not for everybody.
Yeah.
Just because it has so much clout and like so much lore around its positive effects doesn't mean that you have to do that.
Actually, I love that we're talking about that too, because this for me is very much the same as with a lot of medical practices. They kind of give this notion that like this is the one right way to recover from X, Y, and Z. Like this is the prescribed standardized route of treatment. And I think when it comes to mental health, when it comes to spiritual health, it's a lot more complicated. And so too, I think in reality is physical health. And we all have found that like I did the physical thing that the doctor said, but it didn't really work for me until I also did these other things that I discovered on my own. And then it was this combination of things that really helped my leg heal. Or I've heard from clients too that were like, therapy with you has been amazing, but I didn't really feel the weight of my trauma lift until I had therapy with you and EMDR and did sound baths. It
Yeah.
was it was
Mm-hmm.
those things together. And
Mm,
if I'm too in my pride as a therapist to encourage clients to seek out the various forms of healing that they need,
Yeah.
that client, for example, would have never been able to really experience that lift of the weight that they were with this combination. And it's different combinations for different people.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that again speaks to maybe psychedelics is part of one of the many things that heals you. It won't be the only thing that heals you.
I like that a lot. You were talking about the silver bullet, and what you just said is exactly what I usually say with meds. That unfortunately, I've never seen a medication for mental health completely heal, but it maybe can help along the way so that you and I can continue doing work without maybe all of the like ways that we might be feeling like just life is too much right now. Maybe we can take away some of that noise. And maybe psychedelics can open up a space where therapy can then become something where we explore. Thinking about time and wanting to kind of wrap up, but I think one of the things that is important for a client is knowing ourselves is one of the greatest kind of parts of therapy, 100%, and getting to work on this in a safe space. If this is something you're really interested in, Monica is our resident expert, can probably pass you along to some pretty reputable sources that are vetted and whatnot. We don't do psychedelic therapy at CS, but there are other major places that do. And so shoot us a message if you're interested. And if you have had an experience and you really want to talk to someone about it, getting a therapist that can meet you in it. So maybe look for those key words and allowing yourself the space to wonder in yourself if it is something you want. And then I think the best question is asking yourself why. What is it that's calling you? All of that part does the both end of allowing you to have a deeper understanding of that, but also getting to start to understand what's your body telling you right now.
Absolutely. I want to say thank you very much, Monica, for joining us and sharing your expertise and sharing laughs with us. We do giggle a lot on this podcast.
Our first live guest, Monica.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, it's been a pleasure. It's obviously a topic that I am very fond of and could probably talk about for hours and hours on end. So I'm really glad to be here with you both.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening.
Thanks so much for listening. If you enjoyed this episode, check out our others. And stay tuned for even more episodes coming up.
Follow us and leave a review on Spotify or wherever you listen to your podcasts. And please tell your friends.
You can also follow us on Instagram too at Your Therapist Is Not Okay. Also, if you have any questions that you want us to answer, send us a DM there. We would love to answer your questions. And a lot of our topics come from listeners just like you.